All right, welcome to another edition of the Experience Better video podcast series. I'm Josh Meekler, a physical therapist.
My name's Adam Leese, physical therapist as well.
And today we're going to talk about muscle strains. So NBA Finals just wrapped up, and unfortunately Kevin Durant had a major injury, but what a lot of people are talking about is the injury that led to this injury. So about 4 or 5 weeks prior to him tearing his Achilles tendon, he actually had a muscle strain in his calf that a lot of people are attributing to a further injury, that further tear. So can you tell us a little, what is a muscle strain and how do you diagnose it, or what are the components of a muscle strain?
Sure. So the biggest thing as far as a muscle strain goes, you also hear it as a muscle tear. So you sprain a ligament, which is connecting bone to bone. You strain a muscle. And so there's different grades. They usually grade at grade 1, grade 2, or grade 3. Grade 1 means that there's minimal tearing of the actual muscle fibers that might have been stretched just a little bit, but no significant damage. Right. So 0 to maybe 10-15% of the muscle fibers could potentially be torn. Grade 2 is 0, somewhere between that 0, grade 1, to up to 50% of the muscle fibers are torn. And so every muscle is made up of a different number of fibers. It depends on how big you are, what muscle we're talking about. So Kevin Durant, his calf, a decent sized muscle, right. 50% of the total muscle fibers that make up the muscle bundle.
Gotcha.
And so that they said that he had a calf tear. Probably not a grade 3, so it's probably a grade 2, more severe of the minor injuries, I guess.
So what percent was grade 2 and what percent was grade 3?
Grade 2 is 0 to 50%.
Gotcha.
Grade 3 is a complete tear. Yeah, gotcha. So 75 to 100% torn. You might have some of the muscles, fibers that are still there, but it's just not strong. I mean, it's unstable. And so the biggest thing with Kevin Durant is they're saying, did he rush back to injury? Or was his injury completely healed? And so the biggest thing with a muscle tear is you have swelling, you have blood increased swelling, the discoloration, all that good stuff. You have muscle weakness. And so was he fully prepared to go back? Did his Achilles end up rupturing because of his calf tear?
Right.
Possibly. There's no way to tell.
Right.
Obviously, it's a hypothetical game. You can't say with 100% for certain that, hey, he tore this because he brushed it. And so the biggest thing is how do you diagnose this? Number one is you palpate or you touch and feel. And so is there a muscle deficit or a divot? And so as you're feeling, if it's a significant tear, grade 2 on to grade 3, right, you're going to feel that divot present in the muscle. And so that's where you palpate. It's like, okay, you should probably go see the doctor. And then the gold standard would be an MRI. And so they take an image. The MRI shows all the ligaments, all the muscle fibers themselves. You can see it, and it's like, okay, wow, there's nothing here.
Right.
And so it's likely a grade 3.
Gotcha.
And so that's the gold standard. X-ray doesn't show much soft tissue. Right. You can see a little bit. Any more of the X-rays are pretty good quality, but you're not going to be able to diagnose with any sort of accuracy as far as like a grade. So
it's interesting. You talked about the difference between a strain and a sprain. So like a sprain is when you sprain like a ligament, and a ligament is something that doesn't have a blood supply. It's more connective tissue. It just kind of holds. It doesn't stretch or anything like that. So if that goes, it just kind of goes. There's no give to it. So that's kind of an interesting an important distinction to make between when you're talking about sprains and strains and when you're identifying what the injury actually is. So.
Sure. Yeah, and so like for Kevin Durant, for example, he had a calf strain, which is the muscle belly itself. The Achilles is the continuation of the muscle where it goes and attaches to the bone.
Right.
And so usually the weakest point is that musculotendinous junction, and so that's likely where he tore. Obviously, we're not going to know because they're not going to release that.
Sure.
But yeah, so if it's severe enough, you might have to have surgery to repair the muscle fibers. Sometimes you hear about that with hamstrings, every once in a while with quads. Smaller muscles, they typically are able to fill in with scar tissue. And so that scar tissue, it just kind of lays down. It's all clumped together, no rhyme or reason. So that's where you have to stress it or try to do some strengthening exercises in order to try to get that scar tissue to lay down as smoothly or in line with the muscle as possible.
Right. And then strengthen what's left to be able to take the brunt of what the athlete's going to do.
Exactly. And unfortunately, they say that every time you tear a muscle and it fills in with scar tissue, it can only get about 80 to 85% as strong as it once was. Right. And so that's not saying that, say you tear your pec and you used to be able to bench 400 pounds like you,
Right.
You tear your pec, now you're only able to bench 320.
Like you.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And so that's not saying that necessarily that. It's more like with the running form with a hamstring,
Sure.
the maximum amount of tensile force that it can withstand before
Right.
it tears again.
Right.
So it's not like actual pounds of force.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that with
Yeah.
us today. I have kind of a funny story about my wife. I've shared this before on a different series, but I haven't shared it in Kearney.
Yeah.
She's burning water. It's like an epidemic at our house. It's a public safety announcement I need to make that when you put water on your stove and you turn it on high, you need to pay attention. You
Sure.
need to know what you're doing. You need to remember that you have water on high because it's not going to take long to boil. Then once it does, you have just an eruption. It's and so just public service announcement to anybody out there who's boiling water. If you're going to put it on high, let's pay attention a little bit. Or if you're going to do some other things, maybe put it on medium.
Sure. There you
Or
go.
medium high, so that you don't cause major problems in your kitchen. So that's another episode of our Experience Better video podcast series. Thanks for tuning in.